Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We're excited to have one of our partners, Mitch Brown from Datahaven, and Mitch will be presenting on Datahaven 365, your one source of truth. It's a cross-platform document management. And just as a reminder, we are recording this webinar and we will post it to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And we just want to encourage you to ask questions during our presentation. So please feel free to type them into the questions box and we will answer them at the end of our session. So now I will turn it over to Mitch to kick off our presentation.
Thank you very much, Angie, and I want to thank everyone for attending today's session. I'm very excited to present to you some of the enhancements that our team has made over the last year and a half to the solution that, in my mind, really sets it apart from other solutions in the marketplace in offering a single source of truth for all your document management needs. In today's session, we are going to start off with a brief overview about Datahaven before moving on to what differentiates us from other solutions in the marketplace. We're going to be spending the majority of our time, though, going through our demo environment. And as Angie mentioned, we're going to finish up with Q&A at the end. Now, for those of you that may not be familiar with Datahaven, we've been in business for over 25 years. And since the company's inception, we have been developing document management, AP automation, and workflow solutions. And about 15 of those years have really been focused on the Dynamics space. We initially came out with support for Dynamics NAV and have since added support for, of course, Business Central now, as well as F&O, CRM, and integrations with other Microsoft applications that you use almost every day. But really at the core, Datahaven's goal as a company is to take organizations from situations like this, where it may not be paper file cabinets anymore. These files may be stored in Outlook, on network drives, within your ERP or CRM solution. And our goal is to take organizations from a situation like this to this, where everything is organized neatly in patented virtual folder structures. Now, these folder structures can be embedded within the applications that you use every day. These include Business Central and NAV, of course. For those that are using CRM, we also can embed the folder structure within CRM, as well as Power Apps, Outlook, and an application that we've all become very familiar with over the last 18 months, Teams. Now, when you first look at the folder structure, you might be inclined to think it's a standard Windows folder structure, but in fact, it's much more powerful than that. As I think everyone attending today's session knows, there are very complex relationships among records, accounts, opportunities, and transactions within Dynamics. With Datahaven 365, users don't need to have to know how to maintain these relationships. It's all done programmatically behind the scenes. A user can store a file once, and it will then be visible in all relevant areas throughout the various applications. What do I mean by that? Well, for example, if you attached a specification document to an item card, that specification document could be visible on all relevant sales and purchase orders that have that item. Similarly, you could also attach a vendor invoice to a purchase invoice within Business Central, and that file will then be visible from the vendor card as well as any journal entries such as the payment journal. And as I mentioned before, this is all done behind the scenes with no additional input from users. But it's really only half the story of the power of the folder structure that Datahaven provides. If, of course, the information's not being stored in a consistent, organized manner, the system is going to soon be useless. So what Datahaven does is when we're storing documents into our folder structure, not only do we ensure that things are stored in a consistent manner, but we also make sure that it's named according to corporate standards. Now, the folder structure can be as simplistic or as complex as you want. It's something that we can configure based on your needs. And the folder structure provides several enhancements. Number one, we offer enhanced visibility. Not only can you view documents throughout Business Central, but we can also extend the visibility to other applications. As I mentioned before, users can view files from CRM, Teams, Power Apps, as well as Outlook. But we want to make sure that the people that are viewing these files, we want to make sure they're the right users. So with Datahaven, we offer enterprise security. And with that, it goes to a granular level, meaning that we can assign security not only to a folder, but to a particular file type within that folder. This ensures documents such as HR files or credit applications that maintain or have sensitive information on it are only visible by the appropriate users. And with Datahaven, and this is one of my personal favorite features, it also offers enhanced navigation, allowing you to easily navigate from the folder structure to different areas of Business Central, which can really streamline the daily routine of users within Dynamics. With that, I'm actually going to switch from the PowerPoint because, like I said, I want to spend the majority of the time in our demo environment. And to begin, I was talking about, what we wanted to identify or talk about a little bit today is the fact that Datahaven can become the single source of truth. And oftentimes organizations that look to deploy Datahaven have outgrown the standard attachment functionality within Business Central. So I thought a great option to begin would be to show you the attachment features for those of you that may not be familiar with it and compare those to Datahaven. So to begin, I pulled up a customer card within Business Central, and within standard Business Central functionality, there is an attachments area where users can go in and attach various files that, in this case, they want to attach to the customer card. In this case, you can see we've got 5 documents that have been attached, a couple POs, some agreements, but it's a little hard to identify which document, which PO goes with what sales order, the different agreements that are stored here. And the process for getting them into Business Central is a little complicated. If it's an email, you need to save a copy of the email before uploading it into the attachments area. Well, let's compare that to Datahaven. With Datahaven, we're going to take all of those files and store them in a neat, organized folder structure. So if I want to look at our agreements, I've got a separate folder structure where I can see all of our agreements. I can see reseller certificates, credit applications. If I want to look at correspondence or tax form information, I can drill down and easily identify, that we've got a W-9 attached to this particular customer. If I want to attach a file to Datahaven, the process couldn't be simpler. For example, if I have an agreement, an email with a PDF attachment that I want to store to the customer card, using Datahaven, all I have to do is simply drag the file onto the window, and Datahaven's going to prompt the user to identify the type of file that we're attaching. And we're going to use this to rename the file to ensure consistency. And in this case, we're actually going to be renaming the email. So we're attaching an agreement, and I'm going to mark this as the signed final agreement. Click OK. And in just one moment, the folder structure is going to update. And under the Agreements tab, you can see we've got our signed final agreement that has been attached. And this is an email that also includes a copy of the PDF. And it's going to be stored for all appropriate users within Business Central to be able to access for years to come. But we wanted to take things a step further. As part of our messaging around a single source of truth, from the customer card, you might want to look at documents that are attached to all the various sales orders for this particular customer or posted sales invoices. With Datahaven, I can actually drill down and look at all of the open orders. So I can scroll through and see we've got a sales order 101047. I can view all of the documents that have been attached to the sales order directly from this particular, or directly from the customer card. And if I want to navigate, all I have to do is simply right-click, launch the link record, and that will open up the sales order page. So from the customer card, I can easily navigate to any sales quote, order, invoice that I need to investigate further. Now, when I navigate to the sales order, you'll notice that the folder structure within the Datahaven window is updated. That's because we're aware of the page we're on within Business Central. And we just want to, at this point, show documents that relate to this sales order. As I go through, you can see, in addition to the sales order support where we've got a customer PO, I also have access to the items on the sales order, so I can view any documents that have been attached to the item card. So if I want to look at any agreements or pricing schedules or spec sheets or test reports, I can do that directly from the customer card without having to navigate to each item individually. And these files, once again, are documents that are stored against the item card, and simply by attaching to the item card, they're now going to be visible to all appropriate users on sales and purchase orders. Now, I'm actually going to go ahead and remove this customer PO to show you the renaming capability that Datahaven has. So give the system 1 second to refresh the folder structure. Now, under our sales order support, we actually don't have any documents attached. I'm going to go back to email, and let's say, for example, in this case, we want to actually drag and drop the PDF file, which is the customer PO. And you can see the file is just named with a bunch of numbers. Well, with Datahaven, when the user drags the file onto the drop zone, I can select customer PO as the subtype, and the subtype menu, once again, is completely configurable. And when I click OK, Datahaven's going to rename the file that's stored, clearly indicating that this is a customer PO. The goal here is to prevent users from having to open multiple files to find the one they're looking for. And we want to do that by making sure that everything's stored consistently. And with the subtypes, once again, it is something that can be configured based on your needs. A little bit later on, we want to go ahead and send out an order confirmation. And to do that, Datahaven has a nice feature, which is called a tagging mode. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in the tagging mode, because what I want to do at this point is I'm actually going to take a copy of the sales order confirmation and the customer PO, and we're going to be emailing both of these out. So to do that, I simply right-click, select email, now you can configure Datahaven to actually automatically populate the subject of the email. Whoops. So this could actually automatically be populated. It's not set up in our demo environment. It's actually a new feature that we've added. But now I can actually send that order confirmation out, and as you saw, easily include the tagged customer PO. This can be a real time saver when you're sending out files like, sales order confirmations or invoices, to have that backup information be included in those outbound messages. When the order confirmation comes back, once again, I can take that it's approved, drag it, and in this case, we could mark it as a sales order support. And once again, all of that information is going to be stored in one area, accessible to everyone within that has access to Datahaven documents. Now, for this particular order, what I've done is I've actually set it up as a drop shipment. So if you look at the sales order, I've selected this as a drop ship. And the reason I wanted to show a drop shipment, once again, is to have that single source of truth for everyone throughout an organization. If you look at the Datahaven folder structure, at the very bottom, we actually have created a purchase order folder. So I've already went in and created the relevant purchase order within Business Central to show this capability. But Datahaven now gives this user access to not only all of the documents that were attached to the purchase or to the sales order, but I can access all this information directly from, or I can view all of the information that's attached to the purchase order as well. So I can see the purchase order that was sent out to our vendor. When I click on support, I can see that there was a support document, but more importantly, I know that the vendor has acknowledged receipt of this purchase order. So if my customer ever calls in wondering about their order, I do know at the very least that this document has been, or this purchase order has been acknowledged, but we are still waiting on a purchase order receipt. Once again, though, for users that have rights to view purchase orders and sales orders, I can select the launch link record, which is going to take me from this sales order directly to the purchase order in question. And from the purchase order, not only do I have access to the purchase order documents, but I still have visibility to all documents that were attached to the sales order as well. From all of these pages, once again, for having access to everything, I can drill down and also see documents that are attached, in this case, to the vendor card. If I was on the sales order, I would see any information that was stored against the customer card. Now I'm going to go ahead and receive against this particular purchase order. So I'll just go ahead. Now, simply the process of creating a receipt within Business Central, Datahaven is aware of that. If I go under our posted transaction folder, I now have a folder for purchase receipts. And this will allow users to see, once again, any information that's stored against the purchase receipt. But not only that, from the purchase order, if I receive a packing slip that I want to attach, I can attach a packing slip to the purchase order or to the purchase receipt directly from the purchase order screen. So once again, what we're trying to do is to avoid users having to navigate to specific areas within Business Central just to attach a document. I was able to, from the purchase order screen, access that information, or I should say, store that information. Then, of course, we want to make sure that all of these documents follow all posting routines within Business Central. So I can also show you that when you So with this, all the documents that you see here will flow through to the posted purchase invoice. The reason it was prevented is it's requiring me to invoice the sales order first, since this is a drop ship scenario. Now, I'm going to show you a couple ways that Datahaven can automate the receiving and filing of documents in just a few moments, but I did want to touch a little bit more on accessibility to these files from other applications. So to begin that, I wanted to actually show you our most recent feature that we've added, which is Teams integration. And our thought process here is more and more people are using Teams, and wouldn't it be great if we had a channel set up for one of our customers to be able to see all documents that were stored in BC, and for those of you that are using CRM, also CRM. So from Teams, I can actually drill down under our open sales orders for this customer. I can see the sales order that we were just working with. I've got the sales order. I've also got access to the customer PO and other supporting documents as well. I can view information that was attached to the sales order lines as we showed before. But a nice feature is we also have access to any documents that were attached to the quote that ultimately created this sales order within Business Central. So I can drill down, see an email, and have access to all information related to this order. Not only do I have the ability to access it from Business Central, I also have the ability to access it from CRM as well as Teams. And if I have the rights to view a file, if I want to open the customer PO, I can double click on it from Teams. There we have the purchase order. And I can also launch the link record, and it's going to take me directly from the Teams channel to the sales order within Business Central. And just while we're waiting on that, I'm going to hop back over to our purchasing, because I did want to highlight some of the advanced automation capabilities in workflow. So Datahaven, obviously our goal is to make sure that when you store a file once, it's accessible to all areas, all appropriate areas within Business Central and all appropriate users. But the process of dragging and dropping or uploading files may be too tedious when you start thinking about items such as vendor invoices. And Datahaven can automate that process using what we call OCR technology, or optical character recognition. What Datahaven will do is when emails or scanned documents come into Datahaven, we can actually have them be routed into an OCR workflow. And the workflow starts off where you have documents going into, there we go, pending OCR. This is where files initially sit until the OCR engine picks it up. Once it's brought into OCR, it'll be in the OCR processing. And let me just open up the OCR engine so you can see that capability. Now, for today's demo, I did bring 4 invoice examples into the OCR engine. We have 3 PO-based examples and 1 non-PO. With OCR, one of the #1 things that we hear from customers is the fact that oftentimes they need to process invoices quickly because they want to take advantage of early payment discounts that vendors offer, but they want to do so in a fashion that ensures that duplicate payments aren't going out just to try and achieve that early payment discount. Well, Datahaven can help with this process because when those invoices come in, we can route them to the OCR engine. And in this first example that you see in your screen, we have what we call a perfect match. Now, for most of our customers, after a month, these invoices will automatically be processed by Datahaven with no human interaction. What a perfect match means is that the invoice that arrived matches the purchase order within Business Central, and that's indicated by this green check at the bottom. And not only does it match the invoice, not only does the invoice match the PO, it also has checked to make sure that all of the goods have been received. Now, with Datahaven, we actually have a unique feature where we can turn it on to automatically post this purchase order and have it create the posted purchase invoice directly from OCR. But that is a feature that you can have turned on or not. And like I said, most of our customers, the first month will not have it turned on. Then they'll actually turn it on just to speed up the process once their confidence builds. The next example I have is a common exception that we see. And this is an example where the invoice appears to be a match to the PO, except the PO does not have any freight and there's a freight charge on the invoice. With Datahaven, we have a couple of options. We can add a field here to allow the user to add the freight charge to the PO directly from the OCR engine. And that can be done as long as it's within a certain threshold. Or we also have the option where we can route this through an approval workflow where someone's going to have to approve the freight charge. Another common exception that we see with PO-based invoices is when the invoice arrives before the goods have been received. We wanted to ensure that the AP user still had the ability to process this invoice, but what we wanted to do is allow them to process it, but make sure that nothing happens within Business Central. So with Datahaven from the OCR viewer, the user can still submit this. When I submit this particular invoice, what will happen is it's actually going to go into a Datahaven workflow called awaiting receipts. The invoice is going to stay there until the goods have been received. Once the goods have been received, it'll take the invoice, route it back through OCR. At that point, it will be a perfect match and it can be posted automatically. But in this case, once again, we wanted to make sure that these awaiting receipts, not only the user can work with it and not have to set it aside, they can submit it, but it also then will go into a workflow where users can monitor and see which invoices are still awaiting receipts. I will submit that example and finish up with a non-PO invoice example. This can be an area that can be an incredible time savings for an organization, because when invoices come in, typically for non-POs, someone has to rekey all of this information. Well, with Datahaven, the OCR engine was able to pick up all the information on the invoice. Now, when you do receive an invoice from a new vendor, there may be some fingerprinting involved. And what I mean by fingerprinting is you select a particular field within the OCR viewer and highlight where that is on the invoice that was scanned or emailed into Datahaven's OCR. And let's say for today's, I'm just going to select this field. Now moving forward, Datahaven will always know, let's say for the posting date, that's where it wants to look on the invoice. Not only was Datahaven able to extract the header information though, we were also able to extract the line detail and a couple of fields you will see in yellow. That indicates where those particular fields, there's a character that did not meet the confidence threshold within the Datahaven OCR engine. So we may want users to be able to review those, and depending on the confidence, someone may need to actually touch on the field before they can submit the file. The other field I want to highlight is the fact that the invoice number is in red. And the reason for that is when I go to submit it, Datahaven's going to come back with a validation failed. And the reason it failed is because this invoice has already been processed for this vendor. And I like to highlight this because we had a customer that had a duplicate payment problem. They oftentimes would pay an invoice sometimes 2 or 3 times because their AP departments were decentralized, located across the country, and the individual offices would actually approve and issue payment for invoices that also made their way to headquarters, and then headquarters would pay them as well because they weren't aware that a payment went out. With Datahaven within the OCR engine, not only are we checking Business Central data for the invoice number, we're also checking the invoice number for this particular vendor. I'm going to go ahead and make this a unique number so we can submit these files. Once that's done, Datahaven will then automatically export the information to Business Central. And if I go back into Business Central, into the Datahaven workflow, you'll can see once things come out of OCR, they'll then go into various workflows depending on the outcome of the OCR engine. PO errors would be an example of an invoice that has a PO number on it, but there's no invoice within, or there's no PO within Business Central. We have a PO mismatch. That's where you've got documents that have a freight charge, or there's a mismatch on a particular item, or there's sales tax on the invoice that was not on the purchase order. Those where all those invoices will wind up. Awaiting receipts, as I mentioned, these are all the invoices that were a perfect match with the PO, but we're still waiting for the goods to be received before they can be fully processed. And then we have the posted pending payment. These are our perfect three-way matches where the invoice matched the PO, all the goods have been received, and we're just waiting to post those within Business Central. For the non-PO based invoice, that will actually get routed into a separate queue where we can initiate a workflow. Now, the workflow can automatically be initiated, or for today's demo, I'm actually going to manually initiate the process. First thing I did want to highlight is from the Datahaven workflow engine, when I click on a document, on the right-hand side, you can see the folder structure reappears, where I can see all supporting documentation. I have access to documents that were attached to this particular vendor. If I wanted to, I can actually right-click to navigate to the transaction within Business Central. But let's go ahead and route this for approval. So I'm actually going to go into our approval routes and select myself and Brad for approval. So now that that's gone, the approval's been initiated, let's go back into Business Central into one of our purchase invoices. And for now, when I select the document, and it may be a little bit hard for you to see on your screen, but in the Datahaven fact box, we do indicate where this document is in the approval process. So I can see that it's currently in Mitch Brown's queue. If I want to kind of preview the document, Datahaven does have a preview option that allows users to, view the file directly from within the Datahaven fact box. But let's actually go back over to Outlook, because a lot of times we hear from customers where the invoice may be something that a non-Dynamics user needs to approve, and Datahaven allows that with what we call our easy approval. And this is where Datahaven sends out an email notification to a user that an approval task has been assigned to them. I have a copy of the vendor invoice that is attached. So if I double click on that, here you can see the invoice that was just processed with OCR. And for this user, if they want to approve this transaction, all they need to do is simply reply to this email with either approve or reject. If they reject it, they do need to put in a reason as to why it's rejected. For today's demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and mark it as approved and go back into our Business Central environment and just do a quick refresh. If I select the invoice, now we can see that it's in Brad's queue for approval. Brad does have the option to approve it directly from within Business Central using the approve or reject options. We also, now that users are starting to, everyone's starting to travel a little bit more, we've designed what we call a workflow portal that will allow users from any type of device, a tablet, a phone, or their PC to be able to go in and review all actions that have been assigned to them. So for example, here we can see the invoice that was just routed to Brad for approval. We can see the folder structure on the right-hand side. If I want to, I can actually view any notes that pertain to this particular file. In this case, I can see a complete audit trail when it was created, index, the approval hierarchy, if there are any annotations that were made to the document. But I'm going to go ahead and actually approve this out of workflow. And now that it's been approved, it will actually go into the ready to post queue and automatically post that invoice. So those are just a couple of ways that Datahaven can automate. We like to show using vendor invoices because that's typically the document that people ask the most about when it comes to OCR and approvals. But Datahaven can also do what we call a PO flip, which is taking a customer PO and converting it into a sales order. And we can also route any document through an approval process. We've had instances where users want to be able to route, a credit application from a customer through an approval process and make sure that no sales orders or quotes go out until that approval has taken place. And Datahaven can achieve that within Business Central. And the last thing which I wanted to show before I wrap up with some slides is to highlight, once again, going back to the single source of truth. And to do that, I'm actually going to go into a payment journal within Business Central. Now, the attachment feature that's available with standard Business Central works with sales, purchasing, but it does not work on payment journals, service orders, within jobs. And those are all areas that Datahaven support. You can actually add the folder structure to any area within Business Central. One area, the payment journal, is one that I like to highlight because it's been a real time saver for a lot of organizations. Because Datahaven not only allows users to see, documents that relate to a transaction, but if I go through, let's say, for Graphic Design Institute, on the right-hand side, I can drill down and see the supporting invoice information for that particular line of the journal. So if I want to see the invoice for invoice 107204, I can do that from the payment journal without actually having to open up the posted purchase invoice. If I scroll down to worldwide importers, once again, folder structure is going to update where I've got access to the supporting files. Now, with the folder structure, you can have it set up to automatically open up to where this particular file is, or that users have to drill down. We want to make sure, once again, that Datahaven is incredibly configurable based on how an organization wants to set it up. And once again, here's an example I know where we've got some more files where I can actually drill down, see the invoice, and if we need to do some more research, I can launch the link record. We've implemented this for almost all of our customers that we deployed lately, and they've all had nothing but good things to say about it because it really is a time savings when someone's researching a particular payment before approving the journal entry. Now, we've covered a lot during today's demonstration, but one thing I do like to highlight is the fact that Datahaven has over 450 document-centric features. So if there is something that you're looking for that we haven't covered today, please reach out to your Innovia account manager and we can schedule a one-on-one phone call to discuss your requirements in more detail. So some of the things I always tell people to consider when thinking about a document management solution and why they might want to choose Datahaven. Well, I pulled up some quotes from customers which are displayed on your screen now. But really, our team has over 25 years experience providing document management, automation, and workflow solutions to CRM and ERP customers. Since the company's inception, we really have only been working in the ERP and CRM space. So we have a lot of experience in that area, and over 15 of which has been dedicated to the Dynamics platform, most of which in the NAV and Business Central space. Our team is located in Atlanta and also in Virginia Beach. So if you do have any questions or a technical need arises, we're available. And our integrations with CRM, F&O, BC, and Teams really help organizations maximize the return on investment they've made within the Microsoft ecosystem. Datahaven is truly embedded within Dynamics, as I hope I've been able to show for you today. So from a user's perspective, there's almost minimal training or minimal to no training needed because it almost looks like it's part of the Dynamics platform. In terms of next steps, discuss the benefits of electronic document management with your Innovia account manager. If you're interested, we do have a return on investment calculator where you can enter in information based on your unique requirements and volumes, and the calculator will let you know how long until you retrieve an ROI. And of course, I think that every organization is different, so I do recommend reaching out to your Innovia account manager to arrange a personalized one-on-one demonstration. And with that, I will turn things over to Angie to see if we have any questions.
Thank you, Mitch. Yes, we do have a couple of questions that came through. The first one is, does the Teams integration work with all versions of Dynamics Nav and Business Central?
The Teams integration does rely on some of the new features within Business Central. So the Teams integration, unfortunately, is not available for Dynamics NAV users, but it is available for anyone that is using Business Central. One thing I should mention is if you are running NAV, Datahaven still supports NAV going all the way back to 2009.
Okay, thank you. And the next one that came through is, can Datahaven limit who has access to a particular file like an HR document?
Yes, so with Datahaven, when I was going through, you may remember the subtype menu, and that's what Datahaven uses to rename files. And we can limit who has access to a document at a granular level. We know HR is an area where sensitive documents, some which may have HIPAA regulations against it. So with Datahaven, we do ensure that we can put security down at a granular level, and we have several instances of customers that are using the solution to store, credit applications that have sensitive information. And of course, we want to make sure that only the appropriate users have access to that based on regulations in the various markets.
Okay, thank you. And another question that came through is, does Datahaven support hosted version of Business Central?
Yes, Datahaven has options for all flavors of Business Central, whether you're on-premise or in the cloud. And we have different options for hosting the Datahaven database where we store all of the files. It's something that the customer can host either privately or on-premise. We also have cloud-hosted options for them as well. And with Datahaven, the cloud options, that's something that we're seeing more and more. If anyone is interested in wanting to do a test drive, we do have a test drive showing how Datahaven can integrate with customer and vendor cards that's available on AppSource.
Okay, thank you, Mitch. And one last question that came through. Can the folder structure be added to service orders?
Yes, the one challenge that I've heard from customers, kind of circling back to differences between Datahaven and the attachment functionality within Business Central. The attachment functionality within Business Central is available on sales and purchasing, and I think there's one more area that I'm forgetting. With Datahaven, we can apply the folder structure anywhere, service orders, fixed assets, throughout Business Central. So there's really not an area where we don't allow users to attach information.
Okay, well, thank you, Mitch. It looks like those are all the questions that have come through for today. I just want to thank everyone for attending. And if you're watching on demand, we thank you for taking the time out to watch this. So thank you, Mitch, for the presentation today.
Oh, you're very welcome. And one thing just to let everyone know, I know that Innovia is going to be attending the upcoming Summit Conference, and Datahaven will also be there as well.
Yes, that is true. So stop by our booth so you can talk to Datahaven and the team from Innovia Consulting. So with that, as you know, Summit is coming up in October. Week of October 11th in person in Houston, Texas. So for those of you that are able to join, take advantage of all the sessions that are offered to you. And we have about 6 to 8 sessions, I think, from Innovia. We got quite a handful. So make sure you attend those. And also to let you know, we do have training workshops for you and your team members to attend. You can visit our training workshop page at innovia.com/workshops for more information and to register for the training workshop that fits your role. An upcoming webinar for tomorrow, we have one of our very own application consultants, Marguerite Manelski. She's going to be presenting on, with so much talk about warehousing, do I really need it? So check out our website for more of our upcoming events, and that's innovia.com/events. And don't forget about our Innovia Conversation podcasts. Our hosts, Steve Waltz and Jeff Pergolski, have a variety of podcasts that you can listen to. So visit our podcast page, and that's innovia.com/podcast. So check out that selection and subscribe so you'll be notified when those new episodes air. All right, well, we thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Mitch, again for presenting, and we look forward to seeing you soon on another Innovia webinar. Take care, everyone.